What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a somewhat new apologist channel that, well, at least I recently found. And they have produced this video that supposedly proves that God exists using math and science. This is very interesting to me because I'm always on the lookout for good arguments for God that would include some kind of mathematical basis or scientific basis. Because if those kinds of arguments were sound and did in fact prove that a God exists, they would be incredibly difficult to refute. And so John from the Road Trip to Truth channel is going to be stepping us through how math proves that God exists.
Think about it this way. When you memorized your multiplication tables, you were actually demonstrating that God exists.
Okay. How exactly does the multiplication table prove that God exists? Right off the bat, it just sounds like an ad hoc thing that you're saying. You're just arbitrarily stating that God is proven by multiplication tables. What is your evidence that God is necessary for multiplication tables to exist?
Without God, math would never have meaning.
Okay, again, citation fucking needed. Who says that God is necessary for math to have meaning? Math was created by humans. I mean, it represents real things in reality. It represents our experiences in reality. Like, for instance, the experience of having 2 stones and then you add another 2 stones to it, and therefore you have 4 stones. We developed math to represent the reality that we're presented with. So regardless of whether or not God exists, math is a representation of our reality. If, say, for instance, you have 2 stones and then you put another 2 stones and one magically disappears every single time, and then it equals 3 stones at the end of it, then that would just be math. Like, that would be the mathematical description of having 2 plus 2 equals 3. That would be our reality. And we have changed math, all throughout math's history to better represent the reality that we're presented with. So to say that God is necessary for math to make any kind of sense is really just refusing to acknowledge the fact that man created math to represent our reality.
And mathematical equations would never have a consistent result. There must be a constant in the universe for math to be consistent. No God, no math.
Well, so, okay, for one thing, because we created math to represent reality, we created math to remain consistent with reality. So, if it was the reality of the situation that adding 2 plus 2 rendered all these different values, then that would just be part of the mathematical description of addition. But that's not how things work, at least in our reality. So the mathematical description of 2 plus 2 is going to always equal 4. That's been our experience. If you can demonstrate how 2 plus 2 can equal some other number, then please do that and publish it in some kind of mathematical journal. I don't know. Sure, I think they have mathematical journal. You can publish a paper on it in some kind of journal out there of mathematics. But another thing that really confuses me is this whole idea that God gives this reality some kind of underlying uniformity. Like, God is the reason why 2 plus 2 always equals 4. Or 2 stones plus another 2 stones is always going to be just 4 stones. I don't understand the connection between God and that. And if you think about it, because this guy's arguing for the Christian version of God, any kind of Abrahamic definition of God is always going to pose a problem for this underlying uniformity that God supposedly provides. Because the Abrahamic God is very unpredictable. Well, he's predictable in that if you don't obey him and don't do everything to please him, then he will most definitely fuck you up in various ways. But as far as uniformity and reality goes, God doesn't give a fuck about that. At least the Abrahamic God. Because if you'll think back to the Old Testament, there was at one point in time God got really pissed off at this one group of Israelites and he created a sarlacc pit to swallow them whole. How is that uniform? Also, another thing, God regularly appears as some kind of burning column of fire or smoke. At one point in time, he presented himself as a burning bush to Moses. How in the fuck does this give you any kind of indication that God cares about the uniformity in nature? If anything, it seems like this God introduces variability into our reality, not uniformity. So when you say that God is responsible for the uniformity in nature or in math, I don't know what in the fuck you're talking about.
Same thing is true with science. If there's not a rock-steady hand that keeps the laws of nature in place, then laboratories would be worthless because a science experiment would never deliver the same result twice. No God, no science.
Again, this particular argument suffers from the same woes as the previous argument. For one thing, I don't see how the Abrahamic God can be seen as giving reality uniformity, or being responsible for the reliability of nature in the laboratory. Everything about the Abrahamic God says that he only ever introduces variability into reality, not uniformity. More to the point, you're not connecting this idea that God is responsible for the uniformity that we find in nature. You're not giving us any reason to believe that that's true. God seems, as far as I could tell, totally disconnected from nature, in that he doesn't give it its uniformity. He only ever introduces some semblance of variability. For instance, when Moses hit a rock with his rod, not that rod, it spewed forth water. Of course, God got pissed off at Moses at that point because Moses was just supposed to yell obscenities at it, but Moses decided to strike it with his rod to bring forth water. But still, how does this scream uniformity to you? Oh, here's another good thing. Jesus, supposedly the Son of God, also supposedly God himself, meaning that Jesus fucked his mother to have himself. He magically turns water into wine. How is that shit uniform in reality? I mean, nobody else can sit there and magically turn water into wine. Like, literally, magically, like transform it. Nobody else can do that. That is a single point in supposed history that is variable when it's concerned with the natural laws of reality. Oh, we could go all day with the stories from the Bible that do not showcase the uniformity of nature. How about the time that God inspired Joshua to march around a city for 7 days or whatever in the hell, and then yell at the walls, and the walls came down? That was Jericho, by the way, I believe. But still, you have Joshua marching around the city, then yelling at the wall and having his little trumpet things blasting at the wall, and then the wall crumbles. How is this scientific? How is this a demonstration of the uniformity in nature? What I feel like you're really getting at here is you're saying that God is responsible for creating the underlying rules of reality, that our laws, scientific theories, mathematics, laboratory experiments, that all of that is trying to describe. And so without God doing that, that means that math can't make sense, science can't exist, dogs fuck cats and have squirrels as babies. But the underlying issue that you have is that you failed to connect God to these underlying rules of reality. You failed to present a case that solidly connects those two things. I don't see a reason to insert God into that particular equation. It seems like an ad hoc, tacked on explanation as to why the rules of this reality even exist. All because you cannot fathom that the natural world is just that, the natural world, without any supernatural intervention whatsoever.